The Raiders taking on the identity of their head coach and why that's a good thing. That plus more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for September 17th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of the job my man Ari does behind the scenes. Without him, there is no YouTube page for the Locked On Raiders podcast, so we definitely shout him out. We appreciate him in a major way. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And you know we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. Tons of calls, tons of texts. Won't be able to get to all of them. That's obvious, but we'll get as many in as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, as Raider Nation talks about quite a bit, the Raiders don't get talked about nationally. And one of the things I continue to say is, you know how you get conversation nationally by ESPN's, NFL networks, Fox, and all that? How do you do that? Well, you win games that they don't expect you to win. Sunday, nobody expected the Raiders to beat the Ravens. They did. All of a sudden, shocking, the media is talking about the Raiders come Monday. So I heard something really interesting and thought that was really insightful from Good Morning Football on Monday. So I'll let you hear that in segment number 2, talk about the head coach and the personality and attitude that this team is taking on. They started it when he was an interim head coach, and they're continuing with it now. That'll all come up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes, really just kind of looking back at the Raiders' victory over the Ravens and how they achieved it and why it was so important to end up 1-1 instead of 0-2, as there's many teams in the league that right now are in a little bit of trouble, even though it's only 2 weeks into the season. We'll jump into all of that after I tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show, but some interesting little nuggets that I have for you here in segment number 1, and this one comes from NFL Communications. They always send me a email of different interesting little nuggets that they have from the week that was, and for the Raiders, they say the Raiders overcame a 10-point fourth quarter deficit to defeat Baltimore 26-23 as rookie tight end Brock Bowers had 9 receptions for 98 yards. Bowers, who had 6 catches for 58 yards in his NFL debut in Week 1, is the first tight end in NFL history with at least 5 receptions and 50 receiving yards in each of his first 2 games. And as of right now, and I know that the season is very young, it's only 2 games in, Brock Bowers is leading all tight ends in yards in the league. Brock Bowers, 156. Isaiah Likely, who the Raiders just played with the Ravens, at 137. Hunter Henry at 127. And George Kittle at 116. So Brock Bowers is as advertised. Gave him a game ball on Monday for what he was able to do. Love the fact that the Raiders are starting to open things up a little bit, and they really did in that fourth quarter, and start to get the playmakers the ball. Brock Bowers is a big-time playmaker. Obviously, Devontae is a big-time playmaker, and it's only going to make Jacoby Myers' job that much easier with having those 2 big targets that teams are going to have to key in on. I mentioned national media starts talking when you start winning, right? Especially games that they don't expect you to win. Like Daniel Jeremiah does a fantastic job on the NFL Network. He's also part of the Chargers radio broadcast crew. He was talking about Brock Bowers and the way that the Raiders are using him, and if he liked it or not. Here it is. Here's Daniel Jeremiah on Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Bowers was awesome. This second week in a row, and Buck, I don't think that it was an exaggeration when I said it at the time. I thought he'd be their best offensive weapon this year. You're seeing it through a couple games. His speed, his ability to line up all over the field. They've run a nice little 7-man protection, getting just a couple guys out in the route. So they give Minshew time. They're able to get kind of that little wind back, going backside off of a boot. They've hit that 2 weeks in a row, hit it against the Chargers, hit it against the Ravens. They're getting Brock Bowers the ball in space. And for a team that doesn't have a ton, he's already proving himself to be a good selection there for Tom Telesco with his first pick as the Raiders GM.
Just a small sample size right there, but again, you win games that folks don't expect you to win, you catch their attention. And I know a lot of people are hitting me up saying, you know what, though? The media is not giving us enough credit. They're talking about more of what's wrong with the Ravens. That's because the Ravens went into the season with high expectations. Nobody expected them to be 0-2 at this stage of the game, and that's fine, right? You win some more of those games. You got a game coming up against the Panthers on Sunday. Don't have a letdown game. You're supposed to win that one. Win that one. Cleveland, tough defense. Win that one, right? You win some of these games, again, these tough games, just like you won on Christmas against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. That was one that folks started to pay attention to. Hey, what does Antonio Pierce have going on with this team? Again, you start winning games like that, you'll get more conversation nationally and start getting the respect that Raider Nation has been looking for so long. Gardner Minshew, it's funny where even though he's not playing lights out, even though there was a part of myself that thought in the game, even at halftime on Sunday, that maybe the Raiders were going to go ahead and put Aiden O'Connell in because Minshew wasn't getting it done. It's funny through 2 weeks, and you could always look at numbers and kind of dance them up any way you want to. He hasn't been phenomenal, but the numbers would tell you that he's been pretty stinking good so far. Completion percentage, 77.5, which is first in the league. Completions, 55, which is first in the league. Passing yards, 533, tied for second. And I believe, I'm not 100% sure, I believe the only person that's ahead of him is Derek Carr, who's balling out right now in New Orleans. I give him a lot of credit for that, especially after going to Dallas and putting a beat down on the Cowboys. But again, Minshew has had a lot of short passes, a lot of short completions, so a lot of those numbers and the completion percentage is skewed a little bit, but you can't take away from what he did in the fourth quarter for the Raiders and really was able to stick in there, even though he was off to a rough start and the Raiders only had 43 yards of total offense in the first half, but still stuck with it and was able to pull through. Part of the reason why the Raiders were able to pull through, well, a lot of the reason the Raiders were able to pull through is the defense led by Mad Max Crosby, and he is playing at a whole nother level. He's playing to make players around him even better, not just him. And this time, now he has players that he can help make better, right? He has players that are really good that can complement what he does, like a Christian Wilkins, like a Robert Spillane, like a Jack Jones, like a Jacorian Bennett, who's playing some really good ball. Marcus Epps, he's playing some good ball, even though him and Merrick have had some bad angles that they've taken on some tackle attempts. But for the most part, there's players now on that defensive side of the ball that can complement what Max Crosby is doing. Well, Brian Baldinger loves to do Max Crosby little baldy breakdowns, right? So I thought this was a really good one that he did on Monday that I saw by way of Twitter. So here's Brian Baldinger breaking down the latest when it comes to Max Crosby and what he did on Sunday.
From the opening drive of this game, Max Crosby was relentless. The condor right here is going to beat the right tackle right here. And down goes Lamar. Bam. All right. That's always a good way to start the game. Opening drive, you get yourself a sack. All right. Now but it's all phases. The run game was relentless. Like Derrick Henry, he defeats this play before it starts. They were supposed to trap Max Crosby. Voorhees never saw him. He was a blur in the backfield. He runs into Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's a small little guy. You watch him right here, he just times it. There's no way that Rosenstein, the right tackle, can keep him out. Down goes Henry. I mean, it's just one relentless play after another. Now he widens because Ricard comes over there. All right? Now, Ricard's going to be wide open in the flat, but you can't throw the ball over the Condors. You can't throw it over. Look at where Ricard is. There's nobody there, but that ball got batted backwards. All right? There we go. Now, you want to run a screen against him? All right, that's Zay Flowers, all right? First round pick, wide receiver. Who catches him from behind? That's how forced fumbles happen too. Max takes him down from behind, all right? 11 yards down the field. And then you get this right here. Here comes the trap. He splits it. They grab him, hold him, the whole thing. Down goes Derrick Henry. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they try to do to him. You watch all these plays. You watch this right here. You get a 2-sack day and a victory on the road. That plane ride home is fun. He beats Falele. Down goes Lamar. Bam, that hurts. But that feels good to Max. Oh, yeah, that's a good plane ride home. Here we go. Now, you get this right here. I'm not sure what Mark Andrews is supposed to do, but he beats him. And Lamar's feels it coming, and he makes an errant throw. All right, here we go. It's one play after another. Life of Max, all right? You get chipped. The back hits you. The tackle hits you. The tight end hits you. All right, that's just the life of Max Crosby. We know that. He knows that. It doesn't stop him. 14 seconds to go in the game. You just keep chasing. Like, okay, he gets chipped. You just keep coming. Lamar gets away. You make sure he throws that ball away. The Condor was relentless all day long. The Raiders earned that win in the Charm City. That was the best player on the field, Max Crosby.
Baldy's breakdowns right there. Brian Baldinger does a fantastic job with the NFL Network, talking about Max Crosby and what he was able to do on Sunday, and always the breakdowns. And I mean, man, when you have sacks, you have quarterback hurries, you're hitting the running back, the big mammoth running back, you're knocking him down for tackles for losses. You're having pass defense. Just all around game. Max Crosby was that dude. And again, now that he has some complementary pieces around him, that's going to make him that much better. But on Monday, had a call and was I forget who called in, but they pointed out what he said to Gardner Minshew, how that really stood out to him, how that was a big time moment in the game where after Minshew throws an interception, Max says, "Hey, I got you. We got you. Don't worry about it." Even Nate Hobbs walks by, hits Minshew in the helmet, like, "Don't worry about it. We'll get it back." But that was a big moment for Minshew. That was a big moment for the team, and we see how it all played out. And so I mentioned I was going to talk to Antonio Pierce about that on Monday when we met with him. Well, that's how I started the whole press conference off, and asking him that question about that moment and if that was the leadership that he was looking for from Max Crosby. Check it out.
Coach, you talked about Max continuing to grow as a leader and a player. What he did with Minshew after that interception, is that what you're talking about making people around him better when he was kind of poking him in his chest, talking about he got him?
Yeah, no, I think that was huge. Just a huge moment, not just for Max, but for our team. Very adverse situation for us. Sudden change, turnover. Most times you see bickering, guys run out there, but to take the time. And me and Max talked about that a lot. What's going to make him truly an elite player, an elite Raider of all time is that leadership role. And I think that was huge by him. And then just the way we responded as a team defensively, and then obviously in the fourth quarter, yes.
So, again, as soon as that question came across on the podcast, I wrote it down and said, hey, this is going to be one of the many questions that I ask. And I think I asked about 4 or 5 questions on Monday. We didn't have that big of a crowd. A lot of people were traveling back from Baltimore still. So, I said, hey, I got to ask multiple questions now because there's less people in here, and that's fine. So I got some really good questions out there, but that was the most important one. As I said, that I was going to make sure I did just that. So there you go, AP on Max Crosby and how big that was, not only for Gardner Minshew, but also big for the team. So that was a really good point of emphasis. And I know a lot of people on my radio show on Monday talked about that moment as well and how that could end up being a defining moment for the Raiders this upcoming season, depending on what they're able to do. Coming up in segment number 2, want to talk about the head coach, Antonio Pierce, and the fact that he's taken, or the team is taking on his attitude. They picked up that victory on Sunday. I think a lot of that had to do with AP and his approach and how that can help this team and really benefit this team moving forward. That's all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors on the show, including LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, might not have the time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier, even when they just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easy and quick. And matter of fact, right now, all you got to do is post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I also want to tell you about Gametime. What is Gametime? Well, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff so you can show the incredible deals and great seats. You don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. They've got all kind of great different features on the app that could really help you find the tickets that you're looking for, the seats that you're looking for, the prices that you're looking for. Matter of fact, they have seat views. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. They have the lowest price guarantee. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets for cheap. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. What do you have to do get that? All you got to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime, download the app, create the account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, that's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about the head coach, Antonio Pierce, and how he is really putting his thumbprint on this Raiders team. And we know that what he did as an interim, that's what made most of us, including myself, want him to get that head coaching job that he eventually got. I think it took me maybe 3 games before I realized that, AP, in my opinion, was the right guy for the job. And I know it didn't start out great last week against the Chargers, but picking up a big victory over the Baltimore Ravens when you're down, you're going through adversity, less than 100 yards, less than 50 yards in the first half of total offense, to find a way to come back, make a couple adjustments, pull a player out here, put a player back in there for multiple reasons, and find a way to get a big win on the road against a team that has expectations to go not only deep in the playoffs, potentially make it to the Super Bowl. It's funny, I got a homeboy named Corey, one of my best friends growing up. Matter of fact, my best friend really growing up, he's a big Baltimore Ravens fan. Don't ask me why. He's from Oakland, California. He's a Ravens fan. I don't know. I don't get it either. But he always gives me the dirt whenever, the Ravens play the Raiders, just because he always is, telling me that the Ravens are going to win. It's funny, I didn't hear from him leading up to the game, and so I didn't hear from him after the game either, but he always gives me a bad time. So I just sent him a text and said, "Crickets, what happened?" and gave him the little shoulder shrug emoji. And he sent me back an emoji where he was flipping me off, and he said, "Man, I got to give the Raiders credit, man. They always give the Ravens a tough time." And they do, right? Going back to 2021, even when they had this the home opener at Allegiant Stadium, that Monday Night Football game, and the Raiders found a way to walk it off in overtime against the Ravens. Well, they got it done in regulation against the Ravens on Sunday. But this was an interesting nugget from Paul Gutierrez from ESPN. He put out there on Twitter on Sunday. He said, entering today, the Raiders had lost 49 straight games when trailing by 10-plus points during the fourth quarter. Their last comeback win in that situation was week 1 of 2016 at the Saints when they trailed at one point by 11 in the fourth and ended up winning 35-34. That's from ESPN Stats and Information. And we all remember that 2016 season, how magical it was. Jack Del Rio rolls the dice, gets the 2-point conversion. Michael Crabtree makes that. That's when Raider Nation was introduced, I should say, to Jalen Richard and how fast he was from the running back position. His first carry of his NFL career goes for a touchdown. And that, in my opinion, is what really got the Raiders back in that game in New Orleans. They eventually come back and win it, but that was the last time that trailing by 10-plus points in the fourth quarter, they were able to come back. They had lost 49 straight games. So that only happens when you have an attitude adjustment. That only happens when you have a culture change. And we talk about that all the time, to the point where it becomes like coach speak, or just, like filler. Oh, yeah, going to change the culture, going to do this, going to expect to win. But AP has done that. And again, this is nothing new. He went and started doing that as an interim. But now that he's had an opportunity to have a whole offseason, he's had an opportunity to put his staff together. He's had an opportunity to do training camp where he wanted to, off campus, right? Costa Mesa, right? And let that team bond and really start to believe in each other and trust each other and get to know each other, how important that's been. And for the Raiders to improve to 1-1 is a big deal. The teams that drop to 0-2, most of them don't make the playoffs. And this team, has plans of doing better than they did last season. Of course, they got to go out there and win the games. You can't just, all of a sudden assume that you're going to make the playoffs because you're 1-1 after 2 weeks. But this little nugget from Bill Barnwell from ESPN, he actually put a really good piece out on ESPN.com that I was reading. But one little paragraph from it, or a little line from it. Last season, of the 9 teams that started the season with the 2 consecutive defeats, the Texans were the only team to advance to the playoffs. So you don't want to go 0-2. And as a matter of fact, to take it a little bit further, over the past 3 seasons since the expansion to a 17-game schedule, 21 teams have opened the season 0-2. Only 2 have eventually made the playoffs. And last season, the Texans were 1. Right? So that's pretty wild. So now you look at teams like the Ravens and the Bengals. You know, the Broncos are 0-2. Who else is 0-2? The Panthers, who are coming to town, are 0-2. The Rams are 0-2. They're riddled with all kind of injuries and stuff like that. But teams like that really expect to go deep into the playoffs, sitting there with an 0-2 start, isn't good. And it's funny, on my ESPN show on Monday night, I asked Herm Edwards, like, hey, how do you feel about teams that start 0-2 and, the thought that it's hard to get out of that hole? And he said, when it's conference games, that's when it really matters. The teams that you look at that are 0-2 and they've lost conference games, that's when it's really hard to make the playoffs, because you don't want to have those conference losses, right? You want to, because you might be a wild card team. And so when you think about it, if the Raiders had lost that game to the Ravens on Sunday, that would have been 2 conference losses. They already lost to the Chargers, and then they would have lost to the Ravens. So at least they're 1-1 in conference play. Again, the whole goal at the end of the season is to try to get to double-digit wins and try to get a playoff berth, right? I know the Carolina Panthers are coming up this week. That's an NFC team. But then right after that, they've got the Cleveland Browns, who, again, another AFC conference game. But I mentioned at the top about, national media not talking about the Raiders leading into the season. And if you want to get that conversation, you got to start winning games that you're not expected to win. Well, on Good Morning Football, I found this to be a really good point that a former Raider, as a matter of fact, Akbar Bajabiamila, brought up on Good Morning Football. I always got to say his name really slow, and usually I still get it wrong. But he was talking about the Raiders' attitude and how he's personally seen it change under Antonio Pierce, and how they're starting to, kind of not mesh, but kind of build themselves into the form of Antonio Pierce on the field, right? What he's teaching off the field is how they're acting on the field. Check it out. Here he is.
The Raiders and the attitude that they're taking on. I was at the game last week. They're just kind of watching the temperament. They lost that game, of course, to the Chargers. But the attitude that this team is taking on, especially the defense, they're starting to act like Antonio Pierce. They're playing like Antonio Pierce. It is contagious, and I'm seeing it. That first half against the Chargers, they dominated. The Chargers had a hard time converting. I look at this game, the first half, they dominated. And when you think about a good team, to me, a solid team, yes, it's scheme, but attitude is so important. And I'm seeing an attitude from the Raiders that looks like old school Raiders mentality. And I'm looking at this play right here with Max Crosby. This is a great play. You can see right there, Christian Wilkinson on that pick play, sacrificing himself. So then that Max Crosby can come around on that play and get that sack. That, to me, it's not only coordination, but it's also an attitude. Like, yeah, I'm Christian Wilkins, but yeah, I'm still going to go out there. I'm going to put myself out there for the team so my man Crosby can wrap around and get that sack. They brought that type of pressure. They frustrated Lamar Jackson. They shut down that offense, which is supposed to be very explosive with Zay and Lamar and all of that. I love the way the Raiders are playing. And you know what? Not a lot of people were talking about the Raiders as well. Not a lot of people. That we weren't talking about the Saints, and we weren't talking about the Raiders.
So I thought that was some good stuff from Akbar as he's, talking about what he saw, and even going back to the Chargers game where he was there in attendance. And we know what it looked like in the first half and what it looked like in the second half. And, even though the score looks like they, got beat pretty easily, it wasn't an easy win for the Chargers at all. And that's why I've been saying, for the whole offseason, training camp, preseason, I never felt there was a time when the Raiders are just going to get blown out and embarrassed by a team. I just don't see it. And even when, Kevin Ostreicher, host of Locked On Ravens, when we did the crossover together, and he was like, I think, 30, and I don't know what he gave the Raiders, like 10 points. I was like, wow, 30, like that's a lot of points, and not really giving the Raiders any kind of credit. I don't expect to see games like that, and I don't expect everybody to understand that. Like, we cover the team. We follow the team really closely. I've been there every step of the way to see them in training camp and preseason, so I know, what they're capable of doing, and I just believe that this defense will keep the Raiders in every single game. Now, their offense has to step up. Their offense can't wait till the fourth quarter to come alive, right? When AP talked to us on Monday, he said that the run game was piss poor. His words, not mine. The guys up front, they've got to do a lot better work. What it looked like in the fourth quarter is what it needs to look like all 4 quarters, right? They can't just start off super slow and think that they're going to come back and find a way to get it done. But credit them for being able to get it done. And, again, they are taking on the personality of their head coach, Antonio Pierce, where he never gave up. he wasn't a guy that was drafted in the first round. Hell, he went undrafted, right? And he found a way to get onto the field because he was available and he was ready when his number was called. Signed by Washington as an undrafted free agent, wasn't even expected to be a starter. Only got on the field because of injury. And once he got on the field, you know what he said? I ain't coming off. And he didn't. So now you're looking at guys, especially on the defensive side, like Crosby. He wasn't a first-round pick. He's had a chip on his shoulder ever since he was drafted. We all remember the hard knocks. We remember what he went through just to stay on the field and prove that he belonged. Robert Spillane, he's a guy that, many just said, oh, he's a decent depth piece at the linebacker position. He's proven that he's a dude, right? He's proven that he's a dude. He was told that he couldn't, cover. His coverage was bad. Coverage skills was terrible. He's a liability, and he's been doing nothing but playing really well. Jack Jones was waived by the team that drafted him, right? And he's just trying to prove what he's supposed to be, right? Jacorian Bennett is a guy that many doubted after having a bad rookie year, right? And he's coming back with a chip on his shoulder. Nate Hobbs, a late-round pick, right? I mean, this is literally a cast and characters of a bunch of guys that you could almost say are they're not obviously not castaways, but I mean, they're just guys that weren't is highly thought of and thought, okay, well, these guys are good, but they're not great. And they're proven that they can be great, right? Christian Wilkins, obviously he was a former first-round pick, but even he had times. He told us when he was introduced to the media that there was times where he was doubting himself, because he wasn't living up to where he was supposed to be at. And that's why he was excited to get with Tyree so he could prove, so he can kind of help him prove who he's supposed to be. Right, there's a lot of guys on that side of the ball, and then you've got a guy on the other side of the ball who's a starting quarterback in Gardner Minshew, who we've all talked about as well. He's probably a really good backup, right? He's a journeyman quarterback at best. He's not a franchise quarterback. I've said that, right? I still believe that the Raiders need to go find their franchise quarterback, but you think that he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder? Hell, I was talking about benching him at halftime because the game was winnable. It was close. Thought, okay, maybe Aiden O'Connell. That's another guy, right? A fourth-round pick that not too many people have too much confidence in. He's there. He's there ready to go if need be. Hell, I mean, Devontae Adams is making catches on the sideline, 10 toes down, a little toe tap swag. And who's the first guy to pick him up off the ground and celebrate him? Aiden O'Connell, right? That kind of stuff doesn't go unnoticed. The team is there as one. They're one big unit. They're all bonded together. A lot of that, I believe, has to do with Costa Mesa, and a ton of that has to do with Antonio Pierce and just the guy he is, the fact that he believes in them. They know that he believes in them, and they're ready to go out there and perform and put their best foot forward. And so you can see it rubbing off on the team. Like I said, you saw it last year, but now that this is really, truly Antonio Pierce's team, you can see it as well. Without that personality or that attitude, that grit, that belief in each other, they don't win that game on Sunday. How many times do we see the Raiders on the wrong end of a game like that? Right? We've seen it so many times. Or if they get down in the fourth quarter, all of a sudden it turns into a blowout. We've seen it so many times. And again, going back to the original stat, 49 straight games when trailing by 10-plus points during the fourth quarter, they've lost. They finally cracked that on a Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, does that mean that they're going to go and, win 9 more games or go on a win streak? I mean, no, they've got to go out there and do it. They can't take this team that they have coming to town lightly. Carolina's going through some adversity. They just, benched their starting quarterback in Bryce Young, and now they're bringing in Andy Dalton. And a storyline you're going to hear all week long is Andy Dalton's never lost to the Raiders, right? He's 4-0 as a starting quarterback. He's 4-0 against the Raiders. So you're going to hear that storyline all week long. Is that a storyline? Sure. Is he a veteran quarterback that knows how to get it done? Sure. Are the Raiders a better team than the Panthers? Absolutely, right? So this is one of these games, and the Raiders have had them, right? I think back to Baker Mayfield with the Rams. I think back to, Tyson Bagent with the Bears, just to name a couple that are games that the Raiders had no business losing. They've lost. I don't think that that's the case under Antonio Pierce. I don't think that they take any team lightly. I don't think that they play down. Now, it'll be a big test, though. That'll see if they are really, truly turning the corner into the team that they want to be. You cannot play down. Obviously, they played up to the level of competition on Sunday with the Ravens. They knew it was a big game. They went and battled it out and found a way to win it. Now you can't all of a sudden take a step back and play down after getting a win like that, or what you did on Sunday really doesn't matter. You lose to the Panthers on Sunday, then you're 1-2. You're back in the same hole that you were in, because most people expected you to win at least one game in the first 3, but it was the Panther game, maybe not the Charger game and the Ravens game. But you got to just one game at a time. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We'll obviously talk about this game, talk about the upcoming team, talk about the concerns with the veteran quarterback in there as opposed to Bryce Young. We'll do all that throughout the course of the week. But if Antonio Pierce is putting his thumbprint on this team and getting the culture truly changed and the expectations truly changed, like he says he has, and what it looks like to me, then they'll have no problem. I say no problem. They'll have no problem winning this game on Sunday against the Panthers because they'll go out there like they're playing the Ravens or the Chiefs, right? They won't say, oh, well, it's the Panthers. They haven't won. This is going to be an easy dub. You cannot do that in the National Football League. But love the direction that they're going under AP. Love the fact that they are taking on his personality, and you can see it from every single one of those players, offensively and defensively. So that's what I got for you for segment number 2. Today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And you've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel. It is America's #1 sports book. Right now, got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, which is coming up, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. But remember, it's only through September 22nd, so look at the calendar. It's already September 17th. So if you're going to do it quickly. You got to get it done. Go to FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Tim G in Virginia. He's calling to talk about the win over the Ravens, but also concerns he has over this week's game versus Carolina. Here he is, Tim G in Virginia.
Q, this is Tim G from Virginia. Hey, man, just wanted to call in. It's been a while. I'm always impressed on what you do. Keep up the good work, man. It really helps out people like myself to help keep up with the team. So thank you for all that you do, man, and keep doing what you do, man. The call with first, I want to just say that was a big win. I really enjoyed watching the changes. They adapted over the course of the game, and you can see the different little subtle changes that they did. And I just hope they continue doing it. But I do have a concern about the upcoming game against the Panthers. These are games that we normally don't do too well in, and I hope they turn the page and come with that same intensity that they had with Baltimore. And it's going to take that type of intensity throughout the rest of the season. But also, the Panthers are talking about benching Bryce Young and starting the Andy Dalton guy. At one time, Andy Dalton was a quality quarterback. So I hope the Raiders can enjoy this win, turn the page, and bring it for the next home game they got. This will really tell the story. Hey, man, appreciate everything that you do. Raider Nation, here we go. Just win, baby.
Tim, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, my man. And, yeah, there's no doubt that these are – your typical Raider letdown games, right? The game that they have no business losing, but they find a way to do it, right? This will prove that AP has the pulse of this team, and he's literally got his thumbprint on this team. It cannot be a Baker Mayfield with the Rams game, right? It cannot be a Tyson Bagent with the Bears game. It cannot be one of these insert really bad team that finds a way to get a dub. Like, when the Miami Dolphins had Tua and Fitzpatrick. Remember when the Raiders are winning that game, Tua stinking it up. All of a sudden, Ryan Fitzpatrick comes in, couple penalties here and there. They find a way to win the game, right? There's no reason for that. There's these games are have-to wins, right? And especially coming off a big win against the Ravens, you've got to show that's not a fluke. You got to show who you are and that you're a team that expects to win. AP said it multiple weeks ago that they expect to win now as opposed to trying to win. They've got to expect to win on Sunday. They cannot have one of those typical Raider letdown games that you're talking about that a lot of fans are concerned about. So, Tim, you're definitely not alone on that, my man. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you. It's good to hear from you. Up next, a text from Nick in the 808 says, "Yo, Q, what it do? It's Raider Nick out of the 808. Man, I know we should and beat the Panthers beat the dog out of the Panthers and Andy Dalton, but the games against Jeff Saturday, Baker Mayfield with the Rams, Nick Mullins live in my back of my mind. Jack Jones and Jacorian Bennett gave game balls from me. Bennett's been playing some lockdown corner for us, and without that PBU, we might not be celebrating this victory Monday. Raiders. That's Nick in the 808. So, again, going back to the upcoming game, Nick Mullins, right? I forgot about that one. Jeff Saturday with the Colts. That's another one. The guy leaves ESPN and goes to the sideline and finds a way to beat the Raiders with the Colts. And who was it? Matt Ryan rolls out and has a 30-yard rush. Didn't make any sense at all, but it was just too easy. Yeah, again, letdown game. Major letdown game was that Jeff Saturday game. That's a good one. Thanks for bringing that one up. Not that I'm trying to rub it into the souls and minds of Raider Nation, but those are the games that we've been talking about. You can't have those. So thanks for the text. Appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Vader Raider in the 303. He's calling to talk about the victory over the Ravens, what stood out to him, and also talks about what the Raiders have done in the last 10 months on the road, his basic overall thoughts on what he saw. Here he is, Vader Raider in the 303.
You, Raider Nation. It's your boy, Vader Raider. First of all, hats off to the team yesterday for an excellent victory. Big win against a big-time opponent. And Q, I just wanted to say this because I started thinking about this, and it was kind of an ironic thing, and I don't know if anybody's really caught this yet. But in the last 10 months, Raider Nation, the Raiders have not only beaten both participants in the AFC Championship game, but they did it on the road. And it's a very significant thing, and I think one of the things that we need to understand is that's huge, okay? That is very big. That's very important because this team can travel. This defense can travel. And I like the response. I loved Max Crosby getting in Minshew's face and putting his finger in his chest. It was like telling him, you need to step up now. And I tell you what, it gave me chills and goosebumps. I'm like, I hope this is something big. I hope that Gardner, does something with it, and he did. Game balls all around. I mean, Spillane, even Gardner, Devontae, and hey, the rookie Brock Bowers. I mean, the offensive line, I tweeted out, the offensive line is garbage. And all of a sudden, something clicked, and they got it figured out. Gardner got it figured out, and a big-time game ball to 17. Devontae Adams. We talk all the time about trading this guy, getting extra picks together for a high draft pick next year, and you know what? Then this guy goes out, and he puts the offense on his back and says, you know what? We're not losing today. And I love that. I love that about Devontae. He's a great player, and Raider Nation, hopefully this is something that we build on. I really, really hope it is. I hope this is something that we absolutely carry and we make the most of it. And because we've got 3 games in a row that are winnable games. I mean, let's face it. The Browns, the Panthers at home next week, and of course after that, the Broncos. The Browns game is going to be a fight, and so will the Broncos. But we have an opportunity here. We can't let this opportunity pass us by. So hopefully, Q, we'll, keep this thing rolling because you know what? I like what I saw yesterday. All right, Raider Nation, let's keep it going. And you guys all have yourselves a great week. And Q, thank you for everything you do. Vader Raider, out.
Vader Raider, it's good to hear from you. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And, yeah, I like your point about winning on the road, right, against teams like that are tough. The Chiefs on Christmas, obviously, that was a big-time game. The win over the Ravens on the road, big-time game. Now you're returning home. You've got a couple at the crib. You've got the Panthers and the Browns. How nice would it be to go on a winning streak? But you got to get the first one before you can get the second one. So, you've won one now. Now you go and you beat the Browns or the Panthers on Sunday, and now all of a sudden you've got a 2-game winning streak. Then you concentrate on the Browns. That's all you can do. Take it one game at a time. We can look down the schedule, but they can't. They've got to focus on one game at a time. You see how this league is, right? Things happen all the time where teams will look great one week and then they'll look terrible the next week. They can't have a letdown after a big win like that. The confidence, obviously is high right now, but they cannot look at the Panthers as, they're just a terrible team, and that's going to be an easy win at the house. Cannot do that at all. They've got to take it one game at a time. But Vader Raider, thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next is a text from Dreicious in Clayton, North Carolina. So what's good, Q? It's Dreicious from Clayton, North Carolina. Hope you had a good weekend and your week is going well. Saw Coach Pierce's press conference and his emphasis on the boys up front, especially with the run game. I believe there's a chance to reactivate it against the Panthers, but I also believe the Panthers will have high hopes with benching of Bryce Young. Hope this doesn't turn into a trap game. I hope the Raiders keep the pressure up, especially on Dalton, who's not as mobile as Young or Lamar. Treat the Panthers like they're the Ravens or the Chiefs. I like our next few days or next few games and our chances, but I hope Coach keeps them focused. Remain steadfast with that commitment to excellence and just win. Thanks, Q. Raiders. That's from Dreicious and Clayton. And, yeah, I mean, look, Andy Dalton's a veteran. That's the one thing about that. He is a veteran. Yeah, he's not mobile like Young or Lamar, but he's a guy that's been there, done that, knows how to get the ball to the receivers, right? So that's something that they're going to have to focus in on. They've got the pass rush to get to him. They're going to have to do that, play that strong defense, and hopefully the Raiders' offense comes out and plays at a higher level and more consistent throughout the course of the game and not just in the fourth quarter. And, the run game, and we'll talk about it coming up on tomorrow's show. We'll talk about the big boys up front. We'll talk about the run game. We'll talk about areas that the Raiders need to clean up, as AP told us on Monday. The Raiders can't worry about the Panthers right now. They got to worry about the Raiders. They've got to clean up, and he wasn't happy, right? He wasn't happy. He was happy with the win, but he wasn't happy of the failures of the O-line and also the running game. So he let it be known that, those guys are going to hear about it, and they got a lot of work to do. So they've got to clean that up before they can worry about an actual team that's coming in, because, again, you can have success one game like they did against the Ravens, but that's not going to be able to be sustained, not having any kind of sense of a run game. 27 yards on the ground, it's just not going to cut it. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. And, the next few games are fun to look at and think about if the Raiders pull off dubs, but they got to do it one game at a time. Thanks for the text. We'll close things out with a call from Dirk from Hemet. He's calling to talk about the game, what he liked, what he didn't like, and also what he didn't agree with me about. Here he is, Dirk from Hemet.
Q, this is Dirk from Hemet. I'm just listening to the podcast from yesterday's game, and it was a good win, but we did it kind of half-assed. I'm going to be honest with you. It was rough. It was, like you said, an emotional roller coaster. I do like how the offense did seem to come a little bit alive, get a little bit of spark there at the end to wrap that game up. Without defense, we wouldn't have won the game, obviously. I don't agree with one of the things that you did mention, that you were possibly thinking about moving O'Connell into the game to produce a spark. And I'm going to disagree 100% with you on that due to the fact that the O-line was just non-existent, and you even said it in the podcast. If Minshew is a mobile quarterback or somewhat of a mobile quarterback, is getting sacked due to the lackluster of the offensive line, you're going to throw O'Connell in there, which he has more arm power, more arm strength, probably better accuracy, but you're forcing him into an already hostile situation, and we already know he doesn't like to move. So, in my opinion, obviously, none of us were really too impressed with the performance of Minshew. I think it was a great tactic by Antonio, but by keeping Minshew in, battling that out, arm strength, and just battling out on the offensive side rather than putting O'Connell in and potentially getting lit up. I get what your point was to get some sparks, some new energy in there, but I think that would have kind of been it wouldn't have been a good idea just because of the performance of the offensive line at that point in time and for the whole game. But definitely love to see us take down one of the big giants in the NFL. And the defense, like you said, played incredibly. Max, the reason why I have his jersey, he's just a monster. Just a possessed human being. And Brock Bowers, wow, what a pick, what a draft pick. Really happy with that choice that we did there. And again, I love how offense is starting to trust Devontae Adams, Tucker, and Bowers a lot more. And I don't know. I think things are going to start clicking. I hope things click more on the offensive side and we start winning more games. But thanks, Q. Appreciate it. Dirk, out.
Dirk, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, man, clearly the coaching staff didn't agree with me either, right? I mean, again, I looked at the 43 yards that the Raiders had of offense. Obviously, I wasn't going to cut it. They were only down 3 points at halftime. So, yeah, I did. I thought maybe O'Connell made sense to come in. And, yeah, you're right. He doesn't have the mobility. I get that. Offensive line wasn't playing very good, but maybe, he would have saw the game from a different point of view. I don't know. I was just looking for anything at that stage of the game that would help this team as they were only down 3 points. But to the coaching staff and AP's credit and Luke Getsy's credit, I don't know if they had a conversation about bringing O'Connell in or not, and they chose to stick with Minshew. But either way, they stuck with Minshew, and he proved them correct, right? And was able to come back and and help win the game at the end, and really had it when they needed it to. The defense clearly had confidence in Minshew, or else they wouldn't be playing at the high level that they were, right? So yeah, I mean, hey, I was wrong. I'm okay with that, right? Again, that was just a thought that I had. I didn't know if they were going to do it, but I just knew that the game was really close, and you would hate to see another one of these really close games slip through the cracks because the offense couldn't do anything. That's really what was going through my head. But yeah, I mean, hey, to their credit, like I said, good thing that they didn't make that move, because who knows how it would have shook out. Clearly, getting the dub with Gardner worked out really well. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Still got a text from John in South Bay, LA. Got a ton of calls, as a matter of fact, to get to. Still, we'll continue that on tomorrow's show. We'll have more news and notes. It's an off day today, so there's nobody talking like AP or any of the coordinators, which is okay, because there's sound from Monday from AP that I actually want to play on tomorrow's show that involve the run game, involve Colton Miller and the offensive line, and we'll really discuss that probably in segment number 2 coming up on tomorrow's show. And then we start to turn the page to the Carolina Panthers. On Thursday, we'll have the crossover edition, talking all things Panthers and Raiders. And Friday, we'll install the game plan. We'll figure out the keys to victory, what the Raiders will have to do to improve to 2-1. But first thing first, we'll start to look at the Raiders coming up tomorrow and what they can improve to give themselves better chances, especially offensively. We'll start that tomorrow. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.